Hello, energy enthusiasts and clean energy fans. Welcome to Trina Talks, where we have short conversations that speak volumes. I'm your host, Melissa Kavanaugh, head of marketing communications with Trina Solar US. And today's episode focuses on navigating public relations in the rapidly evolving renewable energy landscape, where policy, compliance, and market dynamics are shaping not only business strategy, but also the stories that companies tell. Joining us today is Laura Taylor, CEO of Silverline Communications. Laura brings deep expertise in helping renewable energy companies build credibility, shape perception, and communicate effectively in a highly complex and policy driven environment. But before we plug into that conversation, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for new episodes of Trina Talks on the first Thursday of every month. Laura, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I was thrilled to see a note from you in my inbox, so I appreciate it. And what an amazing series you've put together. So it's an honor.
Well, it's really fun, and we get to approach some really important and interesting topics across the board. But I think this episode is going to really be intriguing because communications, public relations, media relations, how we tell our companies and our brands stories is that's something that every company is needs. Every company is thinking about that, or maybe they should be thinking about that. So I'm really excited to dive in. But before that, I would love to get to know just kind of you when you're not working. What are some things that you love to do?
Well, I love to watch Bills games. I'm a Buffalo Bills fan, so I'm a native Buffalonian. We usually meet each other within 30 seconds of being in a crowded room. We can spot each other.
Uh,
People have made fun of me for that. Like be in a room of hundreds of people and I find the
mhm.
Buffalonian, the Buffalo Bills fan. So that's what we're doing. And when it's not NFL season, we are here in Northern Virginia and with my family and hopefully a dog that doesn't bark. And yeah, we're just out and about here in Northern Virginia.
Well, that's great. And we don't we don't sway away from dogs too much on the podcast. Mine has occasionally made a pass behind me at the same time. It's fine. I feel like people love to have their furry coworkers join them, especially if you're on camera and actually doing something that you're recording. That's when they tend to like to be involved, right?
Yeah, it's the first squirrel Dash has ever seen right now.
Right?
Right. Yeah. So
Dash.
we'll see.
What kind of dog is Dash?
Dash is a mini Labradoodle, and true to the breeder's guidance, he has stayed the weight that they said he was. I know I often meet people out and about that have much larger doodles,
Mhm.
and they say, this my doodle is 70 pounds. He was supposed to be 30. I'm thinking, ooh, well, eh, mine is right on point. So they're supposed to be about 40, 45 pounds. Good dogs.
Yeah. So do they shed? I've heard that they don't shed as much.
I don't shed. So I had a strategy. I wore an all black outfit to the farm where the breeder was, and we rolled around. And I
Uh-huh.
got up and I looked. I thought, there's no shedding. So then I went back. I did the same thing. No shedding. So it's been great. What kind of dog do you have?
I have a Great Dane and she sheds. I don't know what I would do around our house if I didn't have shedding. We're so used to it at this stage, but yes, I have a Great Dane who is a lap dog who thinks she is a human. Has all of the Great Dane feelings wrapped up in a tiny little 138-pound body. So, yes. Anyway, our neighbor dog is a golden doodle. So, They both have we have invisible fences, but they, will run up and down the fence line, and they don't ever meet because they both know where not to go and they're in the fence line, but they love this game of I can race you to the end of the property line and then back, which is hilarious.
And that's awesome. I heard people with dogs that do shed, they find the Roomba
Mhm.
to be very helpful.
Yes.
Lots of Roombas going
Yes,
on.
I do have one of those. Yes, it's very it is very, very helpful. Okay,
It comes with the
well,
dog.
I feel like we could transition Trina Talks to be, about let's talk about dogs all day because I think that is really, really fun, but let's jump into today's conversation. We are going to explore your background in renewable energy public relations, what's driving media narratives today, and what companies need to understand about the intersection of policy, compliance, and communications. We will also discuss how to build a strong PR strategy in these uncertain times and how to position for success over the next several years. Thank you, Laura, so much for joining us today. I know that your background and the time that you have spent in communications in the renewable energy space is really going to be interesting and beneficial for our Trina Talks viewers and listeners. Can you share your background and what led you to specialize in public relations and communications within the renewable energy sector?
I can, happy to do so. So I had worked in banking in the financial sector. I had worked in big tech brands in-house on the corporate communication side. And then I started to work for a Silicon Valley agency, and my colleague at the time and I had started the Washington office for that Silicon Valley agency. And one of the reasons Silicon Valley needed our outpost, as I'll call it, in Washington was to listen for policy decisions and make relationships with policymakers and others and influencers. But this was back in the mid 2000s, and one of the drivers behind the Silicon Valley agency needing this Washington office setup was because they were starting to represent Vinod Khosla's initial investments in solar and utility scale solar and other investments. But I happened to be out at the Silicon Valley office, and the CEO of the agency said, "Hey, if anybody," it was kind of like that moment
Mhm.
in Jerry Maguire when Jerry comes in and says, "I have anybody with me?"
Yeah.
And I ended up being the Dorothy Boyd of that situation. I quickly raised my hand and said, "Oh, I didn't even know what solar was." And I said, "Well, it sounds interesting and it
Uh-huh.
sounds great. And I don't even know who this person is investing, but I'd like a new adventure. I'll do it." And clean energy sounds great. And so I just raised my hand, and that was the beginning of what would be transforming into Edelman's global clean tech practice. And um, then I took that, packed my bags, and have unpacked that specialization, and finally decided, hey, I'm gonna try this for myself. And here we are, 17,
17
maybe
years?
18
Yeah.
years. Yeah, yeah. So it's been quite a ride.
So
Hmm.
what makes it unique? What makes communications and PR in the renewable energy industry unique? And especially, maybe a second part of that question is with all of the policy-driven dynamics that we are facing right now in the industry.
Hmm. I think that technology has transformative power, and the innovation in the energy market is so exciting, and it rapidly evolves. And I'm just drawn to that type way of doing
Mhm.
business. I like rapid change. I embrace change. I like when things have a clip to them, and I think it's exciting, and something's always evolving, and we always have to learn. There's like learning involved,
Mhm.
and I have in the office, I have a picture of my 10th grade chemistry teacher at my desk because there's always those classes that each of us have been in. It's a universal,
Mhm.
it's a shared experience where we say, when am I ever going to use this? And I pinned her up there on my board next to my desk because I know in those moments, when am I ever going to use this again? And here we are.
Mm.
So it's a little homage, and I think that is really important. You never know when you're going to need knowledge, use knowledge, and have to use it to benefit others. And I think this coming out of tech, coming out of the
Mhm.
finance sector, I think once landing in renewables, a lot of us, and I think I heard this from you, I've heard this from Abby prior, is that the renewables business aligned with our core beliefs
Mhm.
as well. We felt like we were doing something and are doing something
Right.
very white hat, very good. It's communications for good with purpose, and so there's all of that. It's all wrapped together.
Right. And I do think that something that you said really does resonate. Being a lifelong learner or being a person who is just consuming the information around them and willing to learn, pick up what direction information or things or trends in the industry, what direction they're going, but being able to observe and understand information or situations from different perspectives. I think that is something that's very real, and in especially in renewable energy, I would imagine that your conversations that you have with policy groups, you probably see very different vantage points or situations. What are some of the biggest themes from your conversations with other industry professionals or policy groups? I know that you are, near Washington. But what are the biggest themes that seem to be shaping the direction of the industry in the US?
Yeah, I mean, I think policy is core to the energy discussion writ large. It doesn't matter what segment of energy we're in, could be
Hmm.
traditional oil and gas, could be renewable. So I love policy because it does drive it seems like every conversation surrounding what we do, whether it's about rebates or credits or any other issue, permitting. And so it's central, and being here within the Beltway environment, certainly we get to absorb a lot of different viewpoints um, and kind of come to this more centrist
Hmm.
viewpoint on where we should be, a mixed energy portfolio, trying to solve for uh, load growth and demand growth,
Hmm.
and how do we do this together. And I do think that there are, at least here in the Beltway, there are a lot of us, nearly all of us, that know each other and work together on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis to ensure that we're moving policy forward, to ensure that we're moving legislation
Hmm.
forward and regulation, and that supports a better experience
Hmm.
for those of us that, which is nearly everybody, that use AI on a daily basis,
Yeah.
or the internet, or the telephone, or
Hmm.
when, it comes down to ensuring quality of life. And so that's where we are. But, I think a lot of policy, the best policy is policy that takes into consideration the communities that it serves.
Hmm. Yeah.
And in federal policy, it's the community. It's our united community,
Right.
right? It's this coast to coast community, which is so diverse. Everybody has different needs, but we all do have the same need, which is the continuation of electricity. I want to watch the Bills game without
Right.
interruption, right?
Right. Absolutely.
You want to make a phone call without interruption. I mean, there are things that we want and that are collective and are shared. And so I think that being part of an energy conversation on how to solve for these things, particularly the challenges.
Yeah.
We're coming up on a hurricane season.
Hmm.
Everybody worries in the hurricane season because, well, right?
Right.
So anything could happen.
Yeah.
Acts of God, as we call them,
Hmm.
right? So we worry about those things. Our utility customers, partners, clients, we worry about them with them, and how are we going to communicate to those communities how they can access energy,
Hmm.
energy sources, and grid sources, and grid energy. And it's just, however they look at it, however they speak about it, but that's really how am I going to keep the lights on?
Right.
A hurricane just ran through
Right.
my city. What does this mean for me? So yeah.
Aside from the storytelling that we try to do from a marketing perspective with Trina, we try to tell stories that are interesting and relevant to the communities that are seeing the um, perhaps things happening in the weather or the time of year where energy is super important, because you're right, they don't want to lose power and not be able to watch their favorite sports game, or the Bulls or the Bills. So are you seeing evolving regulations or incentive structures in the renewable energy? Is that influencing media coverage or public perception?
I think what's influencing coverage right now, there's a few things. I mean, just in this year alone, we've seen how integral like energy is to our lives, from the growth of AI
Mm-hmm.
to the inability or ability to plan and power hyperscaling, and the critical nature of just this little strait in the Middle East, right? And what does that do to global energy markets? And energy is only as good as the policy that supports it sometimes. So this massive discussion right now around taking a look at all aspects of the energy market. And I think the dated outmoded thinking is that renewables aren't quite on
Mm-hmm.
par yet with other sources of energy, traditional sources.
Yeah.
And I think we're quickly seeing, when it comes down to keeping the lights on, when it comes down to worrying about planning
Mm-hmm.
what's going on globally, that it's quickly becoming a moment where renewables have an opportunity
Mm-hmm.
to step forward with all of those case studies and community
Yeah.
stories and say, look, we do keep the lights on. You don't have to worry about whether your NFL game is going to blink on and
Right.
off, or whether or not an act of God is going to occur and cause a brownout or a blackout. We can and are stepping up battery storage,
Mm-hmm.
solar, etc. This week, Silverline put out its second data center report. I call it Powering AI, Bring Your Own
Mm-hmm.
Generation. And we looked at over 650,000 news clips
Wow.
from the calendar year 2025, because we wanted to understand how specifically AI has been driving coverage, media coverage
Mm-hmm.
within that calendar year. And what came through is that 83% of coverage within the 650,000 clips that we looked at are community based.
Mm-hmm.
It's local and regional
Yeah.
media covering what happens in communities. And that's how important, and trade media as well.
Mm-hmm.
These are local stories, these are people stories. And the more brands such as Trina and others in our ecosystem in the global transition can come forward and tell their stories, I think it builds confidence in the overall market
Mm-hmm.
and markets. So it's a critical time for us. It's a real moment of action.
I do think that there is a lot of community. So, on one hand, we are telling our community stories that are relevant because it might be a local construction company that's in your town and they are building or constructing um, projects that really, impact, provide energy for your area, your actual town or city. But there is, on the flip side, a sense of community within the renewable energy industry. So I think that's what you're talking about, that it brings, this is a very good time. We have an opportunity to tell a collective story of the benefits. And I love that you brought up data centers, because I think not only is AI coming into all of our businesses, maybe in different ways, and maybe, we are incorporating the use of AI in different ways, but the impact of the data centers that are, powering the AI generation is going to be important. And I think it's going to impact everyone. So, how can companies effectively communicate what they are doing as a customer benefit? Um, Especially, in helping maximize maybe their policy, their incentives, or in communicating their position in the renewable energy climate that we're in.
hmm Well, I can say that I live 4 minutes and 32 seconds, because I've clocked it many times, from the Loudoun County border. Loudoun County has collectively the most data centers of any
Hmm.
county in the United States. I think Texas might be edging forward. They might have one more, but it has been the epicenter of data centers.
Hmm.
They have 200. They have another 117 planned in the queue. It was, my mother lives there. That's where I went to the diner for coffee this morning. It was a very rural community when they moved in
Hmm.
25 years ago. It's not now. So, how does a community embrace the changes that are happening, and how can those hyperscalers come into a community with their renewable partners and be good
Hmm.
community members? I know that there's a lot, and I've been to some town halls on the congressional side, where there's a lot of listening going on, and I think one of the benefits that renewable partners within these projects offer the hyperscalers is all the benefits of the technology.
Hmm.
You know, we're not um, we're zero carbon solutions for the most
Hmm.
part, by and large, zero carbon solutions. We're not leaving footprints that the EPA has to be concerned about, by and large. There's a lot of benefits. We're not noisy technologies.
Hmm.
Last time a solar panel made noise, I don't know. When would that be? So, I think that there's a lot of benefits. And I think
Hmm.
that having the convergence of the hyperscalers, the developers, with the partners, with the
Hmm.
renewable partners, to tell a story that is beyond we're putting bricks in the ground, but here's all the good things that we're doing to ensure a light footprint and a responsible footprint within communities. Those are stories that are worth telling. And right now, I think they're being overshadowed by fear
Hmm.
and misperception. And perhaps some of these hyperscalers are doing one thing and saying another. And I think they've got to rethink that if they want to be doing business. And communities across America are waking up, particularly rural communities. They are waking up to this data center construction boom. And yes, we want to do this responsibly, but I think being inclusive of partners such as Trina and other renewable partners, we've got great solutions here. We're not
Hmm.
here to pollute
Right.
the community. We're here to be part of the community,
Right.
and that's a really important message right now.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It kind of leads right into the next question is what are you seeing as the most common PR mistakes that companies are making right now?
Oh, I, it's the opposite of being out front and transparent and authentic.
Hmm.
I mean, we could, peel back. What's the opposite of those? I think hiding, don't hide. It's probably the worst thing you could do. Don't spend too much time as a company thinking about whatever, you've got to just get out. You've got to say, even if it's to put a placeholder in,
Hmm.
we're going to come back with more information. We're going to, yeah, but I think sometimes time passes. It takes too long before a comment is made, or the comment hedges on what the tackling the issue hand in hand with the community and seeing the community as a
Hmm.
partner in the solution. So there are those things, but I think there's a lot of things being done right. I think these congressional town halls are fantastic. They serve as ways the community feels they can express themselves. I think media, as we've seen,
Hmm.
83% of media, local and regional, are telling these data center community stories. So, making sure companies need to make sure that they're out there telling their stories with local and regional media and trade media
Yeah.
as well. So, but yeah, don't let time pass without a comment and make sure the comment is transparent.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's amazing advice. That does, I think, in a way, answer what my next question for you was going to be. But what advice would you give to companies who are looking to differentiate themselves?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I think differentiating right now is really proving it. It's not just saying it,
Mm-hmm.
it's proving it,
Yeah.
and then amplifying through partnerships. So, coming out with thought leadership and avoiding like generic terms like the future of energy and
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. You really want to be specific about the benefit that you're delivering and then showing how it delivers. I know you and I have worked on in previously in a manufacturing footprint, and how do we have a town council see
Mm-hmm.
the footprint, and what does it mean to physically walk in that patch of dirt,
Right.
and then how do we put how do we bring workforce stories to life? What does that mean? And I think there's a number of things, but it's definitely don't tell, show,
Mm-hmm.
and be as specific as you can. And I think find partners who are willing to see that there are amplification nodes on a chain, because it's not just about logos, it's about credibility, it's about access, and it's about what you really can unlock
Mm-hmm.
together. And that kind of goes back to our point of there's an esprit de corps, a sense of community
Yeah.
within the renewable industry. And but I think it is real world storytelling that's the differentiator there, and we see that a lot, and I think we're getting
Mm-hmm.
better at it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the customer storytelling or partnerships with your customers they make the most engaging stories. And it reminds me of a couple of years ago, we worked with a customer of Trina's, Spear Commercial and Industrial, and we went another step to connect with their customer, with Spear's customer, which was Foundation Communities in the Austin, Texas area. And that customer installs renewable energy systems on their apartment complexes. And their apartment complexes are for industries or for people who are challenged in one way, shape, or form, either through homelessness or other low income areas. But we got to go there and we got to meet not only with the director of this project, but we got to be on site and we did a tour of all the things that they're doing, and they're creating these apartment complexes that are really doing good in the communities. They are bringing affordable housing to people who need a fresh start, and they're giving them that opportunity to really have a renewed chance, at their future. So it was digging deeper and being able to tell that story of, that's not something that's not saying, we're doing this, but we got to be a part of it and being able to supply the renewable energy that is really important to foundation communities. Has goals for renewable energy, and they know how they can regulate, their costs, their energy costs, and still provide these um, these housing structures that are really just so impactful in the communities. And I love that. It's that
Yeah.
storytelling that
Yeah.
really.
It's measurable
Yes.
impact, right? It's true measurable impact, and you get to see it. And it also shows that renewables are equitable too.
Mhm.
It's not, you don't have to drive a Tesla, come home to your $1 million house
Right.
and plug it in every night. And, it is an equitable energy source, and it's energy for
It
all.
is. It
Yeah.
absolutely is.
Yeah.
So, looking ahead over the next year, what should companies prioritize? I think we're talking about it, right? We're talking about storytelling that resonate with our communities. But over the next year, what should companies prioritize in their communications and their media strategies?
Yeah. I mean, I think, um, we're looking at a very policy is impacting
Mhm.
what's happening. It's a fast moving market. I would lead with outcomes. Don't focus too much on, that don't get in the weeds on bottom line, but I think that focus on business outcomes. And I think you touched on it in your last comment, is affordability. I mean, that's something that we need to be talking about, is affordability and accessibility. And we aren't asking folks to own fancy electric cars
Mhm.
and plug them in at night at the house and pay a little extra to have that charging station. We're not talking about that. We're talking about real world
Mhm.
situations. And so I think that, talking about affordability and accessibility and cost, and that there is parity here, is a very important thing. And I think, just double down on proof, real projects, real customers, keep telling those stories. And the diversity of geography is really critically important, to doing that. There's so many projects out there by so many companies right now, and they're in all 50 states. And as we well know, all of our states are their own little microcosms,
Mhm.
and unique in their own way, and so those present huge opportunities to tell a story for a brand. And then, think about power demand, think about flexibility, think about interconnection. um, not reacting necessarily to the headlines,
Mhm.
but talk about, I think discussing technology solutions, energy technology solutions, in terms of how the solutions create, a more interconnected
Mhm.
world
Yeah.
where power demand is solved for, is something that policymakers want to hear, ratepayers, consumers want to hear. Everybody wants to hear about that. Corporations want to hear about it. They want to invest in it. They want to invest in the partnerships. And I think those things are important. I know that we have permitting to solve for. Will it be solved for? But I think, some of those underlying things that probably the average Joe in the community doesn't think
Mhm.
about and isn't really tuned into. Do they need to be? I'm not sure. But, those of us in the industry that want to see shovels in the ground, that want
Yeah.
to see these projects move forward to meet that demand, to meet that interconnected um, universe, we've got to push for some permitting reform. And that's where I think companies also have an opportunity is to step up with advocacy, particularly around permitting. And there's lots of other topics, but that one comes to mind.
Yeah. So how do companies balance that? How do we or how does a company position themselves with from both a policy standpoint and then the communication standpoint? How do we bridge that?
Yeah. I think the way that we've always worked is that you have to have a team that
Mhm.
understands how to balance that, like how to listen to what's happening at the state house or within the Beltway, and then also understand about the business and the core technology that that business has innovated or is responsible for developing, and bring it together. I think the imbalance happens when one team it has more inside political will than the
Mhm.
other, and it's really the corporate communications challenge is keeping these great specialists in
Mhm.
PR and in PA balanced, and that can be a very
Mhm.
very tricky thing to do, because at some point you do have something going on in the state house, or you do have something going on in the Beltway that will create an imbalance, and you've got to really pay attention to and respond to. But for the most part, it's a bit of a balancing act for folks like you, and your peers in corporate communications and marketing, is to, and I think that goes back to finding a good partner like
Mhm.
Silverline, um, to um, to help you sort through, what do I need to pay attention to now, and what can we put on the docket for the future.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's almost goes full circle to the first part of our conversation where we talked about being always learning and always listening. And that is something that I don't know if a lot of companies realize when you have a really good communications partner like Silverline. It's not only the outbound messaging that you're distributing to, the US or the world.
Right.
But it's also that information gathering and it's collecting the information that's relevant to your business so that you can make informed decisions in how you are approaching your communication strategy. So, Silverline, by the way, just plug there is very good at that side of it, and something that I really appreciate.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, informed decision making. I mean,
Hmm.
and on our side of the fence, there's as a partner, communications partner, we do try to bring new ideas. We try to also not only advocate, but also counsel
Hmm.
when we see a
Yeah.
problem coming up. And I always say to the team, it's like, if you got a problem, you better bring me a solution. So hopefully we're also doing that
Hmm.
too, is we see the challenge, we see the problem, the issue, but we're also bringing a solution to it. And the solution can often be murky, because everything is
Hmm.
fast moving and rapidly evolving. And sometimes, the council we had yesterday is not the council we have today because of what happened last night in the news, or
Hmm.
but I think ultimately it is about trying to not be as reactive, and trying to balance and reinforce messages. It's a real high wire act, and stop talking about what you build and start proving what you unlock and all those
Hmm.
things. It is a high wire act.
So, if you could give one piece of advice to renewable energy companies who are trying to navigate, but also maximize their visibility and their impact right now, what would it be?
I would say show, not tell. Show, not tell,
Yeah.
and show up. I mean, show up, because it really isn't about going to identifying a community with a project,
Mhm.
going to a little league game, shaking hands, giving a check. It's really about finding champions within the communities, and becoming involved in the community, so you understand whose land you're purchasing,
Mhm.
and where the technical, who runs the technical college,
Right.
the zoning board. you really want to authentically be part of those conversations. Are they the next door neighbors? Hey, that's great. I think there's this authenticity about, and things have shifted on community relations.
Mm-hmm.
You really have to embed and champion. But I think it really is about having talking about real projects, and
Yeah.
talking about technologies and how they solve for some of our current energy challenges, and pushing that global transition forward, and advocating for this slice of the energy market and
Mm-hmm.
its real customers, measurable results, all of those wrapped into a bow. It's not an easy thing. If it was an easy thing, I wouldn't have a job, you wouldn't have a job. It would just be an easy thing that people did,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's not. So you need to be out communicating it. And I always say, if we're tired, if Melissa and Laura are getting tired of communicating, it means that somebody else, probably our target stakeholder
Yeah.
groups, are just starting to hear it. So I always say that to the team. Oh, are we tired of it yet? Great, because that means it's
Yeah.
probably it's just starting to germinate out
Mm-hmm.
there too. So have patience.
Yeah.
There's a process.
That's great. That's
Yeah.
great. Thank you, Laura, for joining me on this episode. I hope that I can reserve the right to invite you to join us again in a future episode, maybe
Sure.
when we are outside of all of the political or policy landscape that we're in right now, and we can talk more about other things in the communication side of our business.
Yeah, and thank you for the opportunity. I think it's great to be recognized. The communications function and the policy function are often kind of, things that hum along just underneath. And so I appreciate the opportunity to pull the thread on some of these important communications pieces and policy pieces. And we're all plugging along. We're all schooling in the same direction. So I have no doubt. And it's great to have watched your stewardship of Trina marketing on the US side. And you have been a real champion of getting the brand out and telling those community stories, and working with us in partnership to talk about technology innovation as well. But really embracing what the needs of this market, which
Mhm.
are very specific and very unique. And so thank you for the partnership as well.
Well, I appreciate that. And, I do think that the communication side might be the part that is just under the visibility layer for a lot of
Right.
people. But it should be a little bit higher in importance. It's relevant, I think, to every single business, and not just in the renewable energy space, but it should be something that is important and that we talk about so that it can be maximized as best we can. So,
That is so true. I always say to people, I say, look, when you get in trouble, you call your lawyer, you call a priest, or you call your PR person, or all three.
or all
So
three.
we're here when the chips are down too,
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So, thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Trina Talks. Be sure to subscribe and share this video with your project team or your communications team. Until next time, may your LCOE be low, your efficiency high, and your systems optimized. I'm Melissa Kavanaugh, and this is Trina Talks.